Stop, you haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now, we have new stories every day. Now let's go.
What kind of devilry is this? I mentally asked myself. While working at my desk, I absent-mindedly scratched a spot on my arm. Looking at it, I noticed that the area I had been scratching was inflamed with a red rash about an inch in diameter. I'll have to check tonight when I get home if there are any spiders nearby. Most likely I was bitten while I was asleep last night, so I'll start with the bedroom. By the time I got home, most of the redness had disappeared and much of the itching had stopped. It didn't worry me too much, but I decided to search our bedroom that evening to try and find the culprit behind the bite. My wife Jill was waiting for me. She works in the city but usually comes home and has dinner earlier than I do. As I entered the kitchen, I smelled the aroma of roast beef coming from the pot. When I walked in, she turned away from the stove and smiled slightly. "Dinner will be ready in half an hour," she said as I leaned in to kiss her. She wrinkled her nose and gave me a light kiss before turning back to the stove. "Is that all I get?" I asked, feeling a little disappointed. Lately, she seemed very reserved in our relationship, showing coldness, even disrespect toward me. "I'm tired, and you're lucky I have the energy to kiss you and make dinner. By the way, you didn't take out the trash before leaving for work, and now there's a full bag under the sink." "I'll take out the trash later," I replied, hoping to calm her down. I saw her face turn red and knew what was coming. "Why the hell not now? You always try to put everything off." This had become typical of our relationship recently, and I was getting a little tired of it. It seemed like she was ready to argue and complain about me at any moment. She didn't ask how my day went, so I simply kept quiet about the bite on my arm. I wondered if her behavior might be related to depression. I had read somewhere that when a wife starts nitpicking her husband and getting upset easily, it could be a symptom of depression. It was better to be cautious, as it was obvious she was in a bad mood. I quietly pulled the trash bag from under the sink while she glared at me and took it out to the bin in the garage. Then, I grabbed a beer from the fridge and went to the living room to wait for dinner to be ready. I just wanted to keep my distance from her. If depression was the issue, she needed to see a psychiatrist and get treatment, but I hesitated to bring it up. I could imagine her reaction if I mentioned it, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to deal with that. Jill and I have been married for about 10 years, and we don't have children because she decided that her career was more important. She is 35 years old, quite attractive, while I am 36 with an average appearance. In other words, I don't stand out in a crowd. She heads the underwriting department at a regional insurance company, and I am an engineer at a local consulting firm. We both earn good money and don't struggle financially. When we first got married, there was a lot of love and passion, but over the years, that feeling has faded. After dinner, I took care of the cleaning while she went into the living room. As I worked, she announced that she was going to chat with our neighbor. They spent a lot of time together. The neighbor's name was Fran, and she was divorced. Her husband had caught her cheating, and after filing for divorce, he simply packed up his things and moved to California. I didn't really like how much time Jill spent with her, but I didn't interfere too much. I decided that while she was out, I would check our bedroom for spiders after I finished cleaning up after dinner. Later, in the bedroom, I used a flashlight to inspect the room and the furniture, but I didn't see any spiders. I did find a small brown bug on the headboard, which I caught and put in an empty pill bottle. Then, I found another one under the pillow, which I killed. I was curious about what these creatures were, where they came from, and whether they might have bitten me. My friend Jake knew a lot about different insects, and I thought he might have the answer. I gave him a call. "What's up, Jim?" he asked. "Jake, I need your help. I found this bug in our bedroom, and I've never seen anything like it before. Can you take a look? I'll take a close-up photo and email it to you." "Sure," he replied. A few minutes later, I sent the email with the photo. Then, I leaned back in my chair and waited. About 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "Hey Jim, you should get an exterminator. You've got bedbugs, and they're very difficult to get rid of. That's why I'd recommend finding an exterminator as soon as possible. Have you or Jill traveled recently? They're usually brought back from cheap hotels. That's one way they can end up at home or even at work." "No, we haven't left the house in the past couple of months, and we haven't been near a hotel room. I haven't heard of any at work either. At least, Jill hasn't mentioned anything about her workplace." "Well, you've brought them in from somewhere. Like I said, get in touch with an exterminator and they might have some ideas for you. If they're only in the bedroom and it's recent, the rest of the apartment might still be clean. All right, thanks, Jake. Bedbugs. Damn, I thought I'd better head upstairs, search the bedroom, and see if I can find the source. It's already too late to call an exterminator, so I'll have to wait until morning. Before going to the bedroom, I turned on my old computer and opened Wikipedia to read about bedbugs. There was a lot of unpleasant information about these tiny creatures. The only saving grace, I thought, was that Jill hadn't complained about any bites yet. So maybe we hadn't reached the infestation stage, but it would happen soon enough if they started laying eggs. I began my search with our bed. After checking the seams and crevices of the mattress, I didn't find any new bed bugs or signs of their presence. Looking under the bed, I noticed a small fabric bag among the dust and rolls of gift wrapping paper that Jill kept there. Jill used to take the bag with her to work when she planned to stop by her wellness club afterward. I pulled it out and carefully examined it. It was empty, and I didn't find any bed bugs, but it seemed I had found some evidence. I also noticed a hardened residue at the bottom of the bag that looked like dried male secretions. When I brought it to my nose, I smelled what was unmistakably the scent of those secretions mixed with the smell of female fluids. What the hell? I thought, what's going on? These aren't my secretions. Is she cheating on me? Maybe there was some other explanation, but I couldn't think of anything right away. Could she have lent the bag to a friend? Unlikely. If she's fooling around with someone, I need to find out quickly and then decide what I'm going to do. Forgetting about the search for bedbugs, I put the bag back in its place, went to my den, and poured myself a large scotch on the rocks. Should I confront her? Before I do that, I need to be sure she's having an affair and find out with whom and for how long. That will determine my next steps. A confrontation would just lead to denial and leave me with no clarity and no trust. That's not the best way to continue our marriage. But how do I find out? I could hire a private investigator, but that would likely be too expensive, so I'd have to handle it myself. Electronic gadgets were all the rage, so I went back to my computer to search for them. There seemed to be a ton of websites selling devices designed to catch cheating spouses. I reviewed the different surveillance items to see what would fit my situation without costing too much. Judging by the look and smell of the bag, Jill hadn't been going to the spa after work. She was using that time to meet with her lover, carrying her lingerie for their rendezvous in the bag, and then back home. It was obvious that she was going to a motel or private house, not having sex in the backseat of a car. I used this information to decide on my purchases. Eventually, I chose a small recording device that could be hidden in her bag and a GPS tracker that could be attached to her car. I didn't think tapping her phone would work since she mainly used her mobile phone for personal calls. The GPS tracker would help me monitor her location when she was away from home. I pulled out my credit card and was just finishing placing the orders with express shipping when I heard Jill come home. I heard her go into our bedroom. Her impatience and disregard toward me had become common lately, and now I knew the reason. She was cheating on me, and we might very well end up separating, so I needed to start thinking about protecting myself financially. I made some bank and investment transfers on my old computer. Once I finished, I felt a bit better. If, for some reason, I was wrong, I could undo things later. However, it was unlikely that I was mistaken. I would make changes to my insurance later, after I had solid proof of her infidelity. 2 days later, I received the surveillance devices I had ordered. It didn't take me long to read the instructions for the GPS tracker and set up my laptop to monitor it. Then, I quickly slipped into the garage and attached the tracker to the underside of her car. I did the same with the mini voice recorder when she went to visit her friend Fran that evening. The recorder's transmitter went into the trunk of her car. Once everything was set up, I leaned back in my chair and waited. I wouldn't have to wait long because tomorrow was Thursday, and she usually stopped by the spa after work on that day. She typically left for work earlier than I did, and the next morning I watched on my laptop via the GPS tracker as her car headed toward her workplace. She took her small gym bag with her, so I knew she was likely going to meet her lover. While she was driving, I could hear the radio playing, and then I heard her voice when she spoke on her mobile phone. "Hi, are you ready for tonight?" "Good, same time and place as usual?" "All right, see you there. I love you." My suspicions were confirmed. Her declaration of love to him likely meant that they had been doing this for a while, and she might be planning to leave me. Now, I just had to figure out who he was. I would follow her tonight after work and see who she meets. It seemed like they used different cars, which would help me stay unnoticed while observing. That day, I left work early and parked outside her workplace about half an hour before she was due to leave. Her car was still in the parking lot while I waited, but soon after the workday ended, her car started moving. I tracked her on my laptop. Then I started my car and followed her to the Red Roof Motel by the highway. I pulled into the motel parking lot a few minutes after she arrived, hanging back to observe from a distance. She was still sitting in her car, but soon another car pulled up and parked next to her. A man got out, waved at her, and walked into the motel. He came out a few minutes later, got into his car, and drove toward an apartment complex. She followed him in her car. They both entered room 142. As she entered, she was carrying her small gym bag. Her lover looked familiar to me, and I tried to remember where I had seen him before. He was short, slim, but fairly handsome. Then it hit me. I had seen him at several office parties at Jill's workplace that we had attended. He was married to a red-headed woman, much larger than him, and she definitely had a fiery temper and was very possessive of her husband. I wondered what she would do if she found out about this little rendezvous. I even remembered their names, Joe and Melinda Bateman. We had sat at the same table during one of the parties. I didn't recall Jill interacting with him much, and I was curious about what had sparked this affair. Suddenly, I had an idea that was sure to stir things up. I got out of my car, went into the motel office, and asked to see the local phone directory. I quickly found Joseph and Melinda Bateman listed, stepped outside, and dialed their number on my cell phone. Hello, is this Mrs. Bateman, Melinda Bateman? Yes, who's calling? You don't know me, but something else is interesting. Do you know where your husband is right now? He's at the gym, and why the hell do you care? I think I should inform you that he's currently at the Red Roof Motel near Maple Road, in room 142 with a woman. You're lying. He wouldn't dare do something like that. Check for yourself, Mrs. Bateman. Click. The phone went silent, and with a smile on my face, I returned to my car and waited to see what would happen next. About 20 minutes later, a large Cadillac stormed into the parking lot and stopped in front of room 142. A very angry red-headed Amazon got out of the car, and after confirming that her husband's car was parked outside, she began pounding on the door of room 142. A few minutes later, the door opened, and I saw it was on the chain as Joe peeked through the gap. That didn't stop Melinda. She stepped back and kicked the door wide open, slamming poor Joe in the face. I was really starting to enjoy this as I imagined a very angry woman beating up both Joe and Jill. It took me a few seconds to realize that I had seriously underestimated the fury of a scorned woman. Gunshots rang out from the room. From where I was sitting, I couldn't see into the room, but the shots didn't bode well for Joe and Jill. I was in shock when I saw Melinda return, clutching a 9mm pistol. She got into her car and sped out of the parking lot with screeching tires, almost hitting a truck. A few seconds later, doors from other rooms started to open, and people cautiously stepped out to see what had happened. The clerk from the office rushed over, peeked into the room, and then turned to a nearby guest, shouting, "Call 911. Hurry." I didn't dare move. I thought that if I started the car and drove away, it would draw attention to my strange behavior. Instead, I got out of the car and joined the crowd that had gathered at the door of room 142. I could barely make out Joe's body sprawled on the bed, with blood flowing from his chest. I didn't see Jill. Within a few minutes, the ambulance and police arrived, and I had to decide what to do. Without a doubt, my wife was also in the room and was most likely shot. Should I rush to see what happened to her? I thought to myself that she wasn't really my wife anymore. Besides, should I feel responsible because of my call to Melinda? I didn't think I should be held accountable for someone else's actions. The police quickly secured the crime scene as the paramedics entered the room. A few minutes later, a medic came out and shook his head at the police sergeant. From that, I concluded that both Joe and Jill were dead. People started to disperse, and I decided to follow suit. No one noticed as I got into my car and drove away. Police detectives and the press were just starting to arrive as I was leaving. Some might say I was a heartless bastard for not staying to see what happened to my wife, but I felt that she had broken our marriage vows, and I was no longer responsible for her. It might seem cruel now, but it's important to remember that I was still boiling with anger, though I did feel a little sorry for her. That evening, an hour or two after I got home, 2 police officers arrived. Mr. Donovan, I knew they were there because of what had happened at the motel, but I tried to act as though I knew nothing about the incident. Yes, how can I help you? Is Jill Donovan your wife? Yes, is there a problem? We regret to inform you, sir, but your wife is dead. Both he and his partner looked appropriately upset and somber as they said this. I assumed they had delivered bad news like this before. Now I had to appear suitably shocked by the news of my wife's death. I wasn't entirely sure when I left the motel, but I had expected it. Dead? What happened? She said she was going to the gym when she left this morning. The officers glanced at each other before responding. She was shot, sir. Shot? Why? Where? It was at a motel on Maple Street, sir. The officers were starting to feel very uncomfortable. What was she doing at a motel? I began to feel nervous. She was with a man, sir, and his wife found them and shot them. My God, how terrible. But officers, I recently found out my wife was cheating on me, so I'm not surprised. Where is this man's wife? Did you catch her? She's dead too, sir. She took her own life. I was almost speechless. My God. Yes, sir. Will you be all right, sir? Yes. Thank you very much for the information. Where is my wife now? They took her to the city morgue, sir. You can go there to identify her, and then make arrangements for the funeral. The morgue opens at 9. Thank you again, officers. I'll do that in the morning. Good night, I said, closing the door. I don't think I looked or acted appropriately, as if I were truly shocked by the news, but I felt no remorse for my actions. Now, there were other things to take care of. First, I called Jill's parents. They should be the first to know, I thought. When I told them what had happened, they were initially speechless and didn't believe that their daughter was dead or that she had been committing adultery when she died. They agreed to meet me at the morgue the next morning to help with the final funeral arrangements. It was a sad conversation, and I knew it would be hard for them. Then I called my parents and informed them about what had happened. They were just as shocked as Jill's parents and couldn't come to terms with the fact that Jill had been unfaithful and was now dead. I knew the news hit them hard because they had always loved Jill. Until recently, I had loved Jill too, but the last few months had been tough on our marriage, and I felt my love for her slipping away. When I found out she was cheating on me, whatever remained of my love for her simply vanished, and I started to hate her. Now, I couldn't even mourn her. It began to dawn on me that my call to Melinda, informing her about her husband's affair, might attract the attention of the police. So, I planned to call my lawyer in the morning and arrange a meeting to discuss my involvement in the deaths of my wife and Joe. I didn't think I had done anything that could get me into trouble, but I wanted to be sure, just in case. The police would investigate what happened with Joe's wife, and I wanted to be certain of my legal standing. That evening, I went to bed early but couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the events of the day in my mind, wondering if I could have done anything differently. I concluded that there was nothing I could have changed. Later that week, I met with my lawyer, and after hearing my story, he confirmed that I couldn't be held legally responsible for the deaths of my wife and her lover. In any case, the police never showed any interest in my phone call to Melinda. It may sound unpleasant, but I felt like I had ended my marriage in a better way than if it had resulted in a divorce. I was her sole beneficiary, so all the assets became mine. If we had divorced, I would have had to split everything with her, and that would have been very costly. Now, I'm looking for a new wife, and at 36, I still have time. So, children will definitely be part of my next marriage. Sometimes I find myself grateful for the bedbug bite that started it all. I did hire an exterminator, and he conducted a thorough cleaning and inspection, finding no more pests.
Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.